to your weekly World Climate Change News Report. Our headlines this week are United Nations World Water Development Report 2020, Water Availability Threatened by Climate Change, World Water Day Highlights Climate Effects, the Coronavirus and Reduction in Nitrogen Dioxide Pollutant, Windfarms on the Rise, Climate Change Affecting the Deepest Ice Can in the World, Geo-Engineering to Fight Climate Change, the British Parliament choosing green investments, the aviation industry's carbon offsetting initiatives, and controlling the climate for vegetation. Our first story, United Nations World Water Development Report 2020. Climate change will affect the availability, quality, quantity, and basic water needs for human needs, thus undermining the enjoyment of basic rights to safe drinking water and sanitation for billions of people, warns the latest United Nations World Water Development Report. Some solutions proposed by this report are improved wastewater management, prioritizing water, accessing climate funds, adaptation encompassing natural, social, and technological options, and mitigation consisting of human action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Our second story, water availability threatened by climate change. According to United Nations report, in the next 40 years, climate change is likely to alter agricultural conditions across most of the Indian subcontinent and Mediterranean regions in Africa. Floods and droughts will be the main drivers of this change. Reduction in groundwater and increased salinity will also lead to a decline in agricultural production, resulting in an increase in food prices, as well as a subsequent increase in rural poverty. Climate change will particularly affect areas whose population's diet is largely cloud-based. Third, World Water Day highlights the climate effects. This year's World Water Day, celebrated on March 22nd, highlighted how almost 2 billion people live in countries with high water stress, and climate change is one of the main factors. According to environmentalists, the rise in global temperatures impacts atmospheric water vapors, clouds, precipitation patterns, runoff, and stream flow patterns, thus increasing the likelihood of both heavy rains and severe droughts. Unless urgent action is taken to mitigate the climate, countries will continue to endure water-based disasters such as droughts, floods, and groundwater depletion. Fourth, coronavirus and reduction in nitrogen dioxide pollutant. Nitrogen dioxide is a pollutant produced from our car engines, power plants, and industrial processes. Imagery and readings from the European Space Agency's Sentinel 5P satellite show that over this past 6 weeks, levels of nitrogen dioxide over cities and industrial clusters in Asia and Europe were much lower than the same period last year. The imagery indicates that the coronavirus pandemic is shutting down industrial activity and temporarily slashing the air pollution levels around the world. Our fifth story, wind farms are on the rise. In 2019, there was a growth in global wind energy capacity, both in offshore wind farms and on-land projects in the US and China. The outbreak of the COVID-19 virus could very well be an opportunity to present packages that offer both economic benefits for investing in wind energy and climate benefits. Our sixth story, the climate change is affecting the deepest ice can in the world. A report by NASA scientists revealed that East Antarctica's Denman Canyon, which is the deepest land gorge on Earth, is at risk of a total meltdown because of climate change effects. The thinning sections of the glacier are affected by warm ocean waters on the stable eastern side of the Antarctic Peninsula. Denman Canyon has already shed 270 billion tons of ice in the past 4 decades, and is a critical observation point to monitor sea level rises. Scientists believe that following out of Denman's ice could very well raise the global sea level surface by 1.5 meters. Our seventh story, Geo-Engineering to fight climate change. A new study conducted by researchers from the UCL and Harvard suggests a method to combat climate change by injecting sulfur dioxide at the right dose into the stratosphere. This process, called aerosol geoengineering, consists in the addition of aerosol particles to the upper atmosphere in order to lower the effects of GHG and possibly fight droughts in certain areas of the world. The preliminary results of this experiment show a 9% decrease in climate change effects over a particular land area where the corresponding stratosphere composition was modified. Eighth, the British Parliament chooses green investments. After pressure from prime ministers, the Parliament's Precision Fund has made record investments in renewable energy. Prime ministers were insisting to start greener investments in order to be aligned with the government's legally blinding climate commitments. The fund has decreased its investments in fossil fuels companies in order to tackle climate change. This campaign was supported by the entire Labour Party's leadership candidates, by the leaders of the Liberal Democrats, and by the senior Conservatives. Our ninth story, the aviation industry's carbon offsetting initiatives. The International Civil Aviation Organization held a meeting to discuss the implementation of the carbon offsetting and reduction scheme for international aviation, as well as agreeing on the 6 carbon offsetting programs to fight climate change. The selected programs had to meet off a select of set criteria. Emission reductions are permanent, exceed those set by law, have measures to prevent double counting, calculations are conservative and transparent, as well as being independently audited, and finally, a list aligning the program to the SDGs. And our last story, controlling the climate for vegetation. The Climate News Network revealed that the relationship between vegetation and climate could help the temperature drop by 1 degree Celsius. Vegetation regulates the extremes of temperatures in different climatic zones. However, it is an imminent danger all around the world, such as the Atlantic rainforest that lost 113 kilometers squared between 2017 and 2018. The specialists report that we are facing a warming, and the climate vegetation cycle is dangerous because climate change affects vegetation, and likewise, vegetation affects the climate. This concludes our weekly World Climate Change News Report. Subscribe for more weekly news updates.